All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Barry Tony from Tetra Tech, the moderator for this session. While we're admitting the last few participants here, just let me remind everyone to mute your microphone if you would. Use the chat box if you have questions. You've got a selection there at the top in your toolbar of three dots, which you can click on and select focus or full screen to increase the size of the image on the screen. Also, there will be an evaluation survey link sent out later. We do encourage you to fill out the evaluation. It really helps us to develop these workshops further for the next time around. And then a reminder too that if you have a need for further information on any of the minimum control measures, there's a resource page with quite a bit of information that was sent out with the other information about the webinars. So I want to introduce Brian Johnson from PENNVEST, and he's going to talk to you this morning about some finance opportunities. Take it away.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. And thanks everybody for attending this morning. And I'd like to thank you folks for giving us the opportunity to actually share some information about PENNVEST. We have been around for a while, been funding stormwater and MS4 projects for a while. Just I did a quick little number scan on the projects we've approved in the counties that are attending today, and we have almost $800 million worth of projects approved. A good number of them are stormwater and non-point source projects within the counties. That's relative to almost, frankly, $9.5 billion in total approvals we've had since the program began. And of those totals, about 221 million have gone to either stormwater or non-point source projects, and 122 million in addition to that to grant. So my whole point in that is to let folks know that there is money available for these sorts of things. When EPA first came to us and asked us to speak at this thing, that was primarily to talk about the new grant program that EPA was offering communities for MS4 and for stormwater management. The first years, which they have yet to get the final guidance out to us for, but our expectation is that the first year's allocation of that's available to PENNVEST, we're going to target at one community, one community that can has the capacity to handle that money and the extra requirements that come with a direct EPA grant. But there's going to be future allocations as well, and much of our discussion may relate to accessing some of those projects. But you see here on this slide, we do ag BMPs, acid mine drainage, brownfield. We do a lot of green infrastructure. The bread and butter of the program is wastewater, and stormwater and MS4 relate directly to that. We do have a small, what may be of interest to folks is about a year ago, we've instituted what we're calling a small projects program, where if you have a project that is less than $500,000 request from us, that we've been authorized as staff to process that through the program as long as it's a loan, and you don't have to wait for one of the quarterly board meetings to come through. So we have a process that we can move your application through, get an approval quickly, and get you in line to get started within the same construction season. It's not you'll have to wait until next year to see if there's going to be funding there or whatever. We can get these to move pretty quickly. The other thing that may be of interest to folks here is that we're looking to partner with maybe county planning agencies or regional planning agencies so that we can help them set up either a process that you can implement a long-term series of projects as part of a capital improvement plan, maybe mix or match with other projects, or even at this point, set up a sub-level revolving loan program where PENNVEST can provide the seed money for the county or county regional entity so that you could set up your own revolving loan fund. We're required to get 1% interest back, but if you charge some nominal fee beyond that, any revenues that you get to that you could keep within the fund and have it to loan out in perpetuity. So there's some options there that maybe make sense for some counties or some county planning agencies to set up to make sure you have a long-term availability of match money, long-term access to capital. And we're talking to at least 3 different planning entities. One's a regional, 2 of them are counties that are interested in doing this. We haven't set it up yet. So if anybody has an interest in that or are curious about it, you can sure to reach out to me, or at the very end of this presentation, you'll find the direct PENNVEST contact. Our traditional program, we meet quarterly. These are our board meeting dates. That's, I mean, that's just kind of an FYI thing. This is probably as important as anything. The person that the folks on this call will be dealing with are Tess Schloop, right in the middle of the screen. She's what we call the project specialist that covers any of the projects within the counties that we're talking with here today. And she has, I think it's fair to say that Tess has more non-point source, MS4, Ag BMP projects than any of the other project specialists. So she has a lot of experience with this, and we'll come sit down with folks right up front before you make applications and help make a determination of whether or not we're looking at loan or grant or some combination of loan and grant, and figure out how we can help you mix and match maybe PENNVEST with other funding sources that are out there. The other thing that is available to you that is she's actually in charge of too is helping stand up this Center for Water Quality Excellence. We're funding an independent third-party contractor to house and to organize and to administer this Center for Water Quality Excellence, which is a place where communities, landowners, anybody can go to, and their mission is to help figure out, is there a non-point source or a best management practice or some way to address your MS4 issue, and how can you best address that? What are the technical options? Where can you do it? And how can you fund it? They're going to link you with the possible funding sources that are out there. And that's probably the end of it. But then we can't do both sides, technical and financing at PENNVEST, but we've funded this entity so it'll hopefully avoid some of the confusion about what's out there and what makes the most sense for you to help move your project forward. I mean, our goal is to try to help move your project. One of the best places to find out information about PENNVEST is our website. It's the address is on there, and we do post a lot of stuff on our social media site as well. So I'm here to really kind of tell you that we're in a very interesting and very exciting time as far as infrastructure financing goes, as far as I'm concerned. I spent the first 30 years of my job here telling people that the days of grants are gone. You have to do low interest loan if you're going to do anything, and that's been true to a large part. I think I'm being proven wrong here with this latest set of money that's coming down from the feds. I think there's going to be a great deal of grant money available. Some of it's going to be parlayed into low interest loan, and some of it's going to be required to have some match money, with which a low interest loan makes sense. I think there's a role for this, but I think that we are just on the precipice, right on the edge of finding that there's going to be a lot of money to help communities move forward on their MS4, to move forward on any of the stormwater management issues that they have. And I hope that we all keep our ear to the ground and help each other access as much of this funding as we can to implement these projects. The takeaway from this is that PENNVEST is here. We're an ongoing program. We run about $700 million a year in water, sewer, stormwater, MS4, non-point source work. Of that $700 million, roughly 100 million maybe grant, the rest is low interest loan. So clearly we have more loan than we do grant, but our loan interest rate's going to be close to 1%, if not 1%. Our repayment term is likely going to be 20 years. Could possibly be longer, could possibly be a little shorter, depending on the type of activity that you're doing. but we funded everything from tree plantings to manure management systems, buffers in municipalities. We did a green roof on buildings, those sorts of things. That sort of activity is something we're interested in trying to do as long as there's a water quality impact. And one of the jobs that Tess has is to help you find the best program and the best financing available that you can move forward. So that's truly the end of what I have to say. And I think the answer is to mix and match different things that are out there. We talked earlier. I know the one program I was on, they talked about using, and a lot of municipalities do this. They'll use some sort of an incremental financing scheme where if they have an extra $100,000 in the budget or $50,000 in the budget, they'll do a certain project. But my sense is if you know what you need to do, if you are going to proceed with those sorts of things, and if you're going to put a buffer in, if you're going to construct these sorts of PMPs, that you may be farther ahead using the cost of today's money as opposed to 5 years from now money, just based on inflationary factors alone, and install those things now. It may be less expensive for you to do that, particularly if we're talking about financing at 1% interest. You can borrow some money, get the whole project complete, have it effective now, have the benefits now, and have in place sooner at actually what will end up being a lower cost. So I'd be happy to take any questions. I know Tess is on this call as well, so I'd be happy to have Tess chime in on this if there's anything that I should have mentioned and did not.
This is Barry Tonning, the moderator, and we've got a small enough group here. I think we can ask people to unmute their mics if they have a question and ask it directly to Brian or Tess. And Tess, if you have anything to add, you can unmute your mic right now and go ahead. I do think a couple of points that Brian made need to be emphasized. The last one he made just now about with the cost of money down 1% or so, borrowing the money, doing your project now, and then using your general fund or fee money to pay back that loan over time and having those benefits now, I think is a very good point. And the other is the potential for the stimulus bill money and to be ready if and when that funding comes down with a wish list and be ready to go with your project ideas and applications when and if those announcements come. So again, if you do have a comment or a question, unmute your microphone, ask it, and then mute it back, and we'll hear the response. So if anyone wants to start out, the floor is open.
Let me emphasize, folks, as you're gaining your thoughts there, that the last big slug of money that we saw go through our program was through ERA, and a lot of that was focused on readiness to proceed. I think there's a little bit less emphasis on that from what I'm seeing in the legislation, but truly, folks are going to be interested in projects that are ready to move forward first. They're always going to float to the top of the list, pun intended. They're always going to float to the top. So to the extent that you're moving forward with things, that may be a good idea if you're anticipating construction of something within the next year or so, to elevate the importance of those things to finalize that. Thanks, Barry.
All right, floor is open. Any takers?
This is Tess. I'm just going to chime in. Thanks, Brian, for allowing me the opportunity to speak a little bit. I did want to mention that if you're considering a project with PENNVEST, or if you've never really thought about PENNVEST as a funding option, it's always a good idea to sit down and talk to us regardless. Because, there may be things you don't know about PENNVEST or what we can fund, or, hey, I can't tell you how many times I hear, hey, I didn't even know you did this kind of thing. So the thing about it is, if we do get the stimulus money in, the last time we had that run through, we had to act on it very quickly. So it's best to have meet with us and get your project on our radar rather than not be able to meet with us and maybe miss an opportunity. So it's best to sit down and talk to us, even if you don't think you're going to come into PENNVEST. It's a good idea.
Yeah, Tess may have some information on other funding alternatives, or know what your neighbors are doing, or know what somebody in the next county are doing that can help you and inform you when you're making your decisions.
Good morning. This is Ben Thomas from Cumberland Township, Gettysburg area.
Hey, Ben.
I've been involved with PENNVEST, but it's been quite a few years. What do you think the turnaround time would be if we would have basically a stream restoration project that would be shovel ready in the process that it could go to bed? Financially, we are not a distressed community, so if we would be looking at the loan process, what would be the approximate turnaround time for review and approval?
If it's less than 500,000, that's one of those things that we can turn around in-house in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we could go to settlement as quickly as you were able to obtain bids.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure. Let me say 2 weeks is our goal, and I think we've hit that most times. And we may have had a couple that have been, 2 weeks and 3 days or something, but where our target is 2 weeks, and we've been hitting 2 weeks on those $500,000 and less projects.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Other questions from the group, just unmute and go right ahead.
Let me tell you, one of the questions that I oftentimes get is, I understand, folks tell me, I understand I have to charge a fee in order to be eligible for PENNVEST. And we've kind of wrangled with that issue a bit. And where we've come down is that we assume that a community can afford to provide, Tess, correct me, is that a 0.5% of the median household income, or 0.25%, I think, of the median household income as a reasonable amount that the community can put forth before we would consider them for grant dollars. So if you can generate, and I'm making the number up, if your median household income is such that we believe that you could generate some revenue by charging, and again, making up a number, $10 a month on your residential fees to pay for some debt service, we'll wait until the cost of the project or the debt service related to the project exceeds that $10 a month. It may be $5 a month, depending on the community being served. So we do have a threshold that we look at before we work grant money into a particular project. So that's a question we get oftentimes. The other way that people get into the program with this is they'll move their stormwater fee into their wastewater program. We have several municipalities that charge an extra line item for stormwater management on their wastewater fee. And since our grant dollars are fee-based, we'll take a look at that and see where that lies and how that works out for them as far as loan and grant.
Very good. Other questions from the group? Feel free to unmute and just start talking.
I'm expecting Kelly from South Middleton to be coming in anytime now. You guys, you have a nice program down there, Kelly, and we'd be happy to try to help you move that forward at a little faster pace, and much of the folks in York County as well.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I definitely think that we'll be in touch. We should be knowing what we're going to do here with our PRP within the next year and hit the ground running.
Can I ask the folks that are here, are there any enforcement pressures that you're seeing at this point? What are the issues? I'm going to ask you guys questions if you want to ask me one, because I really want to know this. I'm always kind of in the dark about where we are enforcement wise. And some of the folks I talk to feel like their back's against the wall. Others are thinking, well, nobody's really beaten me up yet, so why am I worried about it? Can I get a sense from the folks here about where we are enforcement wise with the MS4 standards?
Brian, this is Ben, again from the Gettysburg area. We'll actually be undergoing a partial 3-day EPA audit next week. The engineering firm is out of Golden, Colorado, so we are preparing for that. If I could follow up with another question, any penalty for early payoff of a PENNVEST loan?
Absolutely not. No.
Thank you.
No penalty for early payment. Depending on where interest rates go, borrowing rates go. I often tell people, why pay off 1% money if you can pay off something else? But we don't have any, we don't have any issues with an early repayment.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Sean Fabian from HRG. To respond to your question about enforcement, I know a lot of our permittees that have a general permit are working against the 2023 timeline to have all their pollutant reduction plans in place. I know a lot of folks are very curious to see if some of the bills that were introduced to try and give a 2-year delay to that deadline might gain some traction, but are diligently working toward trying to do the best they can to meet that deadline. I know some municipalities are in much better shape than others with their traction toward that sediment reduction total. So I don't know that a lot of folks are as much panicking as not maybe understanding some of the timelines that we have to deal with. So anybody that's dealing with a stream restoration project now with the permit delays that we're seeing with DEP and Army Corps of Engineers to process through some of the load with an intense activity we've had this year so far, you could need all of the next 2 years just to get through your design and permit process to be ready to go to construction. So if you haven't started that process by now, we're trying to push several municipalities to really strongly consider doing that, because you're going to be in really bad situation to try and meet your goals if you haven't at least started that evaluation and permitting process by now. I am working on a PENNVEST funded project for a drainage improvement project for one of my clients. I know we're going to over the next month hopefully schedule a meeting here with Tess to talk about the second loan, and that's going to have most of the remaining pollutant reduction plan projects. So we're already working with you guys on that.
Thank you. Thanks, Sean. And I don't want to necessarily scare anybody away about, we're just talking loan money, because there is some grant money available. And I just, it's probably worth a discussion just to see where you would fall if you're going to move forward. Okay.
Yeah, we've definitely had more concern with the folks that wanted to do PAYGO with achieving all the deadline, all the required projects by the deadline than those that chose to borrow and hit everything they could up front and pay on the loan over time.
I think it's your outfit, Russ McIntosh, well, and Adrian as well, came up with the whole plan about the cost of money now as opposed to the cost of money in 5 or 10 years, and made a pretty clear argument that it makes sense that it's more cost effective to use today's money than 5 years from money, particularly if you can borrow at low interest rates. So my advice to the folks on the call here is to keep track of the stimulus money that's there, but not necessarily, don't sit on your hands for 5 years to wait for something to drop in your lap. If you really want to move forward on something, you can move forward with it, and then you could potentially repay it with some grant money later on, depending if that's what is allowed. But stay in touch with this. Stay in touch with this. I think we're going to get a lot done. And I said early on, we're living in an exciting time with this. There's more money and infrastructure coming in the next few years than we've seen in a long, long time.
All right. Are there any final comments or questions from the group? Going once, going twice.
Thanks, folks.
Yeah, we do have about 15 minutes until our closing session at noon. Thank you, Brian. Great information. For everyone else, hopefully you will log in at 12, consult your agenda, and you'll find the link there. If there are no further comments or questions, well, we have someone entering now. If there are no further comments or questions, we will adjourn now. Thanks for attending. Don't forget, we start tomorrow morning promptly at 8 o'clock if you're not going to attend the noon session. So thanks again, and we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Thanks, Ben. Okay. Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, thanks.
And be in touch.